In the winter of 1872, a ship is sailing across the Atlantic, and no one is steering her. Her sails are set, her cargo is worth a fortune, and she is wandering across the wind like a thing lost. A lookout on a passing vessel watches her for a long moment, because what he's seeing makes no sense. This is the Mary Celeste, found sailing, with no one aboard. For 2 hours, her discoverers shout across the water. Nothing answers. So 2 men row over, climb the rail, and step into the strangest crime scene in the history of the sea. 6 months of food and water, the crew's boots and pipes, still waiting by their bunks. A child's toys on the captain's bed, money and valuables, untouched. 10 people sailed this ship out of New York. A captain, his wife, his 2-year-old daughter, and 7 able seamen. Every single one of them is gone. For 150 years, the world has called this unsolvable. But the evidence was lying on that deck the whole time, and it tells a story, one that starts with the one man who would never have abandoned this ship. The log reads, November 7th, 1872, New York Harbor, 10 souls aboard. But this ship had a story before she ever had this name. She was launched in Nova Scotia as the Amazon, and the sea seemed to hate her from the first day. Her first captain took sick and died at the very start of her career. Then a collision. Then she ran aground and wrecked. Her new owners rebuilt her and did the one thing every sailor on Earth knows you never do. They renamed her. To seamen of 1872, renaming a ship is asking the ocean for trouble. But her new captain doesn't believe in superstition. Benjamin Briggs is 37, a devout, teetotal, Bible-reading master mariner with a spotless reputation, from a family that gave the sea 5 captains. He believes in God, in seamanship, and in this ship so completely that he sinks his life savings into buying a share of her. And then he does something that tells you everything about his confidence. He brings his family, his wife Sarah, her small melodeon organ for the cabin, and their daughter, Sophia Matilda, 2 years old. 7 crewmen fill out the manifest, and Briggs hand-picks them. He writes to his mother that he's satisfied with every man. Below their feet, the cargo, 1,701 barrels of raw industrial alcohol, poisoned, undrinkable, and worth a fortune in Genoa. 1,700 sealed casks of fumes and vapor, packed tight in a wooden hold. The night before departure, Briggs has dinner with an old friend, Captain David Morehouse, master of the Dei Gratia. 2 respected captains, 2 ships loaded at the same docks, bound across the same ocean, days apart. They part with a handshake. 2 friends, 2 ships, 1 Atlantic. Only one of them would arrive. November 7th. The Mary Celeste stands out of New York Harbor into a gray, hard autumn, and the Atlantic gets to work on her immediately. For 2 straight weeks, the log tells one story: weather, headwinds, heavy seas. Sarah writes in a letter home that it's been one continued storm since they left. Nothing dangerous for a master like Briggs, but relentless. Day after day of a pitching deck, a straining rig, and 1,700 barrels working and shifting in the hold below, breathing their fumes into the sealed dark. And 8 days behind them, history's strangest coincidence puts to sea the Dei Gratia. Captain Morehouse, the friend from that final dinner, casts off from the same city into the same ocean on nearly the same track. 2 ships, sailing the same storms, separated by a few hundred miles of grey water. A shadow following a ghost that doesn't know it's a ghost yet. November 24th, the Mary Celeste logs another rough night, rounding north of the Azores. Then comes the morning of November 25th. 8 o'clock. Someone, probably the mate, steps to the log slate and writes the position. The island of Santa Maria, in sight, 6 miles off. Routine words: course, wind, weather. No alarm, no damage, no distress. The most ordinary log entry a ship can make. It is the last thing anyone aboard the Mary Celeste ever wrote. Whatever happened to 10 human beings happened in the hours after that entry, within sight of land, in fair morning light, with the worst weather behind them. That's the detail that has haunted this case for a century and a half. They didn't vanish in the storm, they vanished after it. And for 9 days, the Atlantic keeps its secret, while an unmanned ship sails herself 400 miles, alone, until December 4th, when a lookout on the Dei Gratia squints at something wrong on the horizon. December 4th, 1872. Around 1 in the afternoon, the Dei Gratia's lookout calls down, "Strange sail, 5 miles off, steering wild." Captain Morehouse raises his glass and watches a ship yaw drunkenly across the wind, canvas half set, some sails flying loose. He hails her, nothing. For 2 hours the Dei Gratia shadows her, shouting across the water at a deck where nothing moves. Then Morehouse sends his first mate, Oliver Devout, across in the boat, and Devout climbs over the rail of a ship he recognizes. It's the Mary Celeste, his captain's friend's ship, and she is completely, impossibly empty. Now walk the deck with him, because every item is evidence. The wheel, free, untended. The binnacle knocked over. The compass smashed. 3.5 feet of water in the hold. Real, but nothing a sound ship can't survive. One of the 2 pumps, taken apart. Its pieces lying on deck, useless. 2 hatches open to the sky. Below, the crew's oilskin boots and their pipes, still by their bunks, and no sailor on earth abandons his boots and his pipe. The captain's cabin, charts, clothing, Sarah's melodeon, the child's toys on the bed. Money and valuables untouched. Food and water for 6 months. A sword in its scabbard, clean, no blood, no damage, no sign of violence at all. And then, what's missing? The ship's single small boat, gone, launched on purpose. The chronometer, gone. The sextant, gone. The ship's papers, gone. That is not a robbery. That is not a mutiny. That is the exact kit a captain grabs when he steps off his ship, intending to navigate somewhere. One more thing. Hanging over the side, trailing in the sea, the main halyard, a rope 3 inches around, snapped. So be honest with me in the comments. Everything on this deck says 10 people left deliberately, in minutes. What makes the most careful captain on the Atlantic put his wife and his 2-year-old daughter into a 20-foot boat while his ship is still floating? Gibraltar would spend 3 months on that question and accuse the wrong men. Devout and 2 men sail the ghost ship 600 miles to Gibraltar and expect a hero's welcome. What they get instead is an interrogation, because the man waiting for them is Frederick Solly Flood, Attorney General of Gibraltar, and Solly Flood does not believe in mysteries. He believes in crimes. A ship doesn't just empty itself. Somebody did something, and he is going to find it. He finds stains on the deck and announces their blood. He finds the sword in the captain's cabin and sees a weapon. He spins his theory in official dispatches. The crew got into the alcohol, murdered the Briggs family in a drunken frenzy, and fled. One problem. The cargo is poisoned industrial alcohol. Drinking it doesn't make you violent, it makes you blind or dead. Then the stains come back from analysis. Not blood at all. So Flood pivots to a darker target. Wasn't it strange that Captain Morehouse, who dined with Briggs the night before departure, just happened to be the one who found the ship? 2 friends, 1 insurance windfall. The court never proves a thing, because there is nothing to prove. But it doesn't have to. When the salvage award is announced, the Dei Gratia's men receive a fraction of what honest salvors should get. A number that whispers, "We think you did something." Morehouse sails away with his reward and his reputation both cut in half. And then, in 1884, the case falls into the hands of its most dangerous storyteller yet, a broke, unknown, 25-year-old ship's doctor who writes a magazine story about the mystery, a fictional survivor's confession dressed up as fact. He renames the ship Mary Celeste. He puts warm, half-eaten meals on the table. His name is Arthur Conan Doyle, and his invented details are so vivid that the world decides to remember them instead of the truth. The myth eats the evidence for 100 years, but the real answer was never in Gibraltar and never in a magazine. It was sitting in the hold the whole time, in 9 empty barrels. When the cargo is finally unloaded in Genoa, the tally comes back. 1,701 barrels shipped, 9 of them empty, and those 9 barrels share one detail that unlocks this entire case. They're built of red oak. Every other barrel in the hold is white oak, dense, tight, trustworthy. Red oak is porous, it seeps. Somewhere in 2 weeks of storms, 9 barrels quietly bled raw alcohol into a sealed wooden hold, vapor building in the dark, cask by cask, roll by roll. Now stand on that deck on the morning of November 25th and inherit Captain Briggs's information, only his. The storms have finally passed, but strange sounds are coming from the hold, casks groaning, maybe a dull rumble as trapped vapor shifts. A smell of raw spirit rising through the seams. He can't inspect the cargo. It's packed to the deckhead. He can't even measure the water under it properly. His sounding gear gives him doubtful readings, and one of his 2 pumps sits in pieces, clogged and useless, right there on the deck. So he knows exactly 3 things. There is water below him he cannot measure. There are 1,700 barrels of explosive vapor he cannot see, and his wife and daughter are standing on the lid of it. And 6 miles away, in plain sight, land. So Briggs makes the carefulest decision of his careful life. Not panic, procedure. Everyone into the yawl. Take the chronometer, the sextant, the papers, the navigator's kit, and tether the boat to the ship with the longest line aboard, the main halyard, 3 inches of good rope. Stand off. Wait. If she doesn't explode, we climb back aboard in an hour, and this becomes a story we tell in Genoa. It is the right decision. It is the safe decision. Then the wind freshens. The Mary Celeste's half-set sails fill. The ship begins to pull. 10 people watch 3 inches of rope come taut between their little boat and everything that can keep them alive. It snapped, and the Mary Celeste sailed away from her own crew, faster than 10 exhausted people could ever row, with their food, their water, their shelter, and their names. What the Atlantic does with a 20-foot open boat in November, it does quietly. The sea's arithmetic needed nothing more. Here is what the Atlantic gave back of 10 human beings. Nothing. Not the yawl, not a plank of it, not an oar, not a scrap of clothing, not one of the 10. Search vessels watched the sea lanes for months. Every port, from the Azores to Gibraltar, waited for a boat that never came. The most investigated vanishing in maritime history produced in the end a number, 0. The ocean took 10 people within sight of land and never admitted it. But the ship, it refused to take. The Mary Celeste is repaired, recrewed, and sent back to work. And for 12 years, she sails under a name no seaman wants on his discharge papers. Owners buy her cheap and sell her fast. She runs through hand after hand like a coin nobody wants to hold. Crews sign aboard, hear the stories, and jump ship in the next port. She loses money for every man who touches her. The ghost ship, sailors say, is looking for her crew. By 1885, she's worth almost nothing, which gives her last captain an idea. Gilman Parker stuffs her hold with worthless junk, insures it as premium cargo for a fortune, and then, in broad daylight and calm water, sails the Mary Celeste straight onto a razor coral reef off Haiti, deliberately, at full sail, and tries to burn what's left. The insurers smell the fraud in weeks. Parker is charged with willfully casting away a ship, in 1885, a hanging offense. The case collapses on a technicality, but it doesn't matter. His name is ruined, his career is finished, and within 3 months, Gilman Parker is dead. The sea refused to take the Mary Celeste for 13 years, so a man finally had to do it for her, and she took him with her. The log of the Mary Celeste holds one last entry, and history has to write it for her. 10 souls sailed. The sea returned none. 150 years of theories, sea monsters, waterspouts, mutiny, ghosts, and in the end, the evidence tells a smaller, colder story. It didn't take a monster to empty this ship. It took a barrel of the wrong wood, a pump clogged at the wrong moment, a rope that held for exactly as long as it didn't matter. That's the real horror of the Mary Celeste. Not how strange the sea is, but how little it needs. And there is 1 second in this story that no court, no scientist, and no storyteller will ever reconstruct. The moment the halyard parted, 10 people in a 20-foot boat, watching their ship straighten up and sail for the horizon without them. Land was right there. Their food, their water, their letters home, all of it leaving at a speed no oar could answer. We know everything about that morning, except the only thing that matters, what it felt like. The ship got 12 more years, and a name that will outlive us all. The 10 people who sailed her got a silence the Atlantic has kept ever since. The sea keeps every story. It only lets us read the ones it's finished with. And if this one held you, the sea has an older ghost still sailing. On your screen now, the ship the Royal Navy saw with their own eyes, and logged. The legend they couldn't explain. The Flying Dutchman is waiting.